Hey everybody, so I have a super fascinating question to talk about today. Like a lot of the questions that come up, I saw it first on the internet in a Facebook group, and it was such an interesting thing that I had to kind of talk about it on the channel. So the statement was or the question rather is it easy to become a HEMA champ? And that was what was asked. Is it easy to become a champion? And I think there are elements where it's yes, and definitely elements where it's increasingly no, it's not. It's actually pretty tough. So some of the things is like it's a pretty small group of people that do it. A lot of the people that do it are recreational, once, twice a week maybe is the training, because they have full-time jobs, and it kind of doesn't make sense to put everything into the hobby when you got to work and you got a family and all that. And then there was also that because it's a relatively new sport, some of the training methods are not fully developed yet. We don't have a lot of professional coaches in place that are experienced at it compared to other sports. So all of that is like, it's true, but I think that it's only partially true because those things are changing pretty rapidly in the scene. So if you look maybe when I started in the 2000s, it was a much less competitive place. So when I first started, and a lot of these competitions were SCA, Rapier, and some HEMA events too, that were purely HEMA, it was fairly easy for somebody who was a recreational level and trained maybe a couple times a week to place in those events. Like I did it myself in my first ever competition that I did. I got a gold medal, and it was just like an in-club tournament with the other students that were there. And then I also competed in some more SCA HEMA events where I did the same. Really early on, I would either get a gold or a silver. If my teacher at the time was my coach at the time was competing, I would get a silver. He kicked my butt still. Good memories, really good times. But skill wise, if I look at the footage now, it was way behind what a lot of the intermediate fencers or even some of the beginner fencers are at today. And I'm not just talking about my own club, where that's definitely true, but I'm also talking about a lot of the clubs that visit with us, compete with us, or that I've seen. So the level of skill has grown significantly. And if me back then were to go to a tournament today, I wouldn't make it out of pools. There's no way. And I managed to pull off a win in some of those cases, right? That wouldn't happen now. It's become increasingly difficult to medal. And so it's the same thing with what I've noticed in tournaments is I'm spending more and more time training. I'm spending more and more time with professional coaches that are full-time coaches. The sport fencing coach that I worked with for many years and really learned the core of fencing from was a professional coach at the Royal Military College here in Canada, in Ottawa, and was a full-time coach and was taught by full-time coaches that were professional coaches, like really high-level, top-level guys. And so me busting my butt, there are times where I scrape by, I just scrape by. And this is me training like 5 days a week, sometimes 6 or 7 days a week. And I'm not just coaching others. I'm also getting lessons in bouting all these times. I'm doing drills, doing everything, right? So it's maybe less than a professional fighter would do. So a professional fighter back when I was at the MMA gym, you probably train 2 sessions a day. And that's it, like a morning session or a lunch session and then an evening session. Sometimes you do like multiple classes, but it would just be like a block. And so if I compare myself to that, today I'm doing about an hour a day. And then there's other days where I'm doing in morning session and then a long evening, like a 3-hour stretch, whether that's at the Sport Fencing Club or at the HEMA Club. So it takes a lot more, right? And I've managed to keep things, for the most part, like going well for me. And that's good, but it takes that. It's very difficult. It's very challenging. My opponents are so great these days. I love fencing them because they're so challenging and they're really bringing it. And they're doing something similar. A lot of them are cross-training multiple sports. So you'll see them doing sport fencing, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, MMA, everything. But they're also training HEMA almost daily, if not daily, right? They're also training that. So we have some really serious athletes. And many of them come from really physically literate backgrounds, whether that's like hockey, sport fencing, kickboxing, all those things. A lot of them are very experienced already. So they're fully physically literate and they're coming into the sport. So I think the level of expectations is just skyrocketed. And so you have to be doing multiple days a week of training. You have to be physically literate. So you have to be capable of understanding the language of movement, distance, timing, the physical mechanics of everything, and integrate that really well. And you have to be really comfortable with variability. So one thing that I will say is more challenging in HEMA than in sport fencing or other sports is the level of variability that you fence against, that you fight against. So if you compare this to like American boxing, there are multiple styles that are in it, but all of them seem to share the same core, the same basic pedagogy, right? Which is, these are my punches, these are my blocks. This is how you parry. This is how you catch, right? This is how you block. This is how you cut. All the movements, all the fundamentals are really, really similar. And then there's variations. In HEMA, there's no consistency at all. Like, for good or for worse, there's zero consistency. People can be working on all sorts of different styles that are completely opposite and maybe work or take advantage of things for completely different reasons. But it is a real challenge to train for that. Like, how do you train for a style that you've never seen before that day or you've never read about? It's so fascinating. It's so interesting. And that's one of the things that is drawing actually a lot of sport fencers. So I've had coaches, sport fencing coaches that are really excellent, high level coaches, asked to come train HEMA because of that, because they're so interested by the problem solving aspect of it. And I think that's something really, really cool about HEMA, is you're going to be challenged by people who maybe don't even use historical sources, but somehow they have this beautiful sense of distance or timing, right? And you can't predict what they're going to do. Sometimes they do the exact opposite of what they're supposed to, and they're not like a beginner in that they're not slow at it, they're not incompetent at it. It's not new to them, right? It doesn't feel weird for them. They're very skilled at doing something a different way. And if it works, it's right. And that's one thing that I get argued with sometimes about. But my philosophy is, if it works, it's correct. And I still use a lot of historical sources. I still use tradition. And that's my approach. My approach is based on that. But if somebody else is getting me, there's something that they're doing right that I'm not doing right, or there's something that I'm doing wrong in that scenario. I'm making a wrong tactical choice. My mechanic is wrong. Maybe my distance is wrong. So that's a lot to think about, right? And so one thing I would challenge everybody is that maybe there was a time where HEMA was a really easy sport to medal in. I think that time is gone. As soon as you're going to any one of the really skilled tournaments, you're seeing that more and more. And I've definitely seen that growth in Canada. The scene here has grown astronomically. And it could be true that that's not true in every part of the world, or even in Canada at every tournament. Not every tournament is like that. But you're seeing a huge increase of skill. And so my challenge is, I think it's really hard. And I think I have a good ability to say that because I've consistently done it several times, or in the past few years, I've done a lot, and both locally and not overseas, but here in Canada, by flight is what I'm looking for. I've flown to other places, other scenes, other communities, and I've done it consistently at some of the big ones here in Canada with a lot of top 50 in the world fencers at it, right? So I think it's hard. I think it's harder than you guys realize. And I'm not saying that because it's just hard for me. I think it's hard for everybody. People are so skilled nowadays. So I want to hear what you guys think about that. I'm really, really curious to hear if you totally disagree with me, if you think maybe there's something else that I'm not keeping account of. But what I think is that it's difficult and it's only getting harder. And so we have this beautiful gift from that. That's a gift, right? Is that we get to adapt and we get to grow. And that's exactly what we look for as fencers, as swordsmen, as swordspeople, right? Is that adaptability. That's what keeps the game so interesting. So that's the video for today.